Now, I know that most everybody who's listening to this show today who knows about you knows your story, how you got started. Um, but you know what I find really wonderful about your story is that you knew what you wanted to do very young. And I know a lot of voiceover talents, they sort of find their way to voiceover through acting or radio or this or that. But you were extremely focused and made that happen. And
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit how that occurred?
Well, I mean, I didn't know voiceover was a term. I just knew I wanted to do voices for cartoons. And in particular the Looney Tunes, and in particular Porky Pig. So I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't know this was acting. We moved to LA when I was 14. And I was just like, okay, well, Mel Blanc is the voice of Porky Pig. I'll just give him a buzz, which I did. And I taped the conversation. And throughout the course of the conversation, he mentioned the studio he was working at that week. So I called the studio pretending to be his assistant to get the time and the day he was going to be there. And we crashed the session, my mom and I was 14, I wasn't driving.
Wow.
Uh, but you're absolutely right. Even back then, very few people said, I want to work in voiceover. A lot of a lot of very successful voiceover actors came from radio back then. And radio back then, you know, had a certain style as it does today. There's a radio sound for DJs, and especially DJs that specialize in pop music. And that sound was actually very in with announcing and voiceover. So it was just a very natural transition. The Joe Ciprianos and the Bo Weavers and the Townsend Colemans, Don LaFontaine, Danny Dark, Ernie Anderson. These people just organically went from, well, my 4 hour shift is over at this radio station. Now I'm available to do voiceover.
Right.
And when I got into the business, or when I started training, I didn't have a radio sound. And just as I started studying, they went away from the radio sound and into a more conversational, very real delivery and commercial voiceover. So my timing was really good, because to this day, I don't have a radio sound, and I wouldn't know how to put it on if I did.
Right.
So, long story short, I was introduced to my first agent by Casey Kasem, and that was when I was 18. We got to high school. And then it took me about 5 years with my first agent of hit or miss auditioning before I was able to make a living at this. So the real timetable, what from first voiceover class to working actor, was 9 years.
What a thing to be able to say. I got an agent through Casey Kasem. Not many people can say that, Bob.
Well, not many people today will know who Casey Kasem is,
Well,
but Google
you're,
Google
you're
him.
well. I'll tell people he was one of the best known DJs of all time.
Hmm.
Had a show, the American Top 40, for
Yeah.
years and years and years and years. But that's pretty impressive. So before you called Mel Blanc on the phone, were you practicing Warner Brothers cartoon characters? You
Oh
gave him a
yeah, but
tape, right?
yeah. Well, so the answer to your question is yeah. But I would watch cartoons. My mom used to tell a story that on Saturday mornings when I was like 5 or 6, she'd be in the kitchen doing breakfast dishes. I'd be in the living room watching Saturday morning cartoons, and she'd hear a line from the TV, and then she'd hear the line again, which she thought was odd. Why are they repeating the same line? And she stood behind me and watched me mimic the Looney Tunes back to the Looney Tunes, and that's when she realized I had a knack for this. And yeah, I used to do funny voices in school and get in trouble by the with the teachers. And but I didn't know I was practicing for my future career. I was just doing this talent, this I had a good ear. My voice hadn't changed. I can
Mm,
guarantee I didn't sound very good until my
mm,
voice changed. I got old tapes of myself practicing these voices,
mhm,
and I sound like a kid trying to sound like Porky Pig.
mhm.
But I was driven, I was passionate. But people are like, "How did you know you wanted to do this when you were so young?" Well, how does a baseball player when he's in little league know? No, this is what I want to do for a living.
Right.
Um, I've got friends whose kids, they could tell from their first science class in school they wanted to be a doctor.
Mhm.
Not, I mean, I would say the majority of people out there have no idea what they want to do, even when they graduate college.
Yeah, I'd
I just
agree.
did.
Yeah.
I just did, and I didn't have a plan B. I didn't go to college. I didn't have anything to fall back on. I just was very passionate and driven.
and everything worked out for you. I mean, the stars aligned. You had parents who supported you. You had parents that took you to auditions. Your mom helped you. And you had really great parents, a drive, a fantastic talent, and probably a lot of luck.
Well, I will. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because anybody who says there ain't luck involved is lying through their teeth.
Hmm.
It is like the planets do have to align a certain way. I mean, for
Hmm.
me to even have an opportunity to audition for Porky Pig as a professional, I had to live in the city where it was done. I had to be trained and ready. I had to have an agent, and I had to be around at the time they needed it. I'm going to correct you on one thing. My parents never took me to auditions because I didn't start auditioning until I was 18.
Oh, okay.
But they did take me to my voiceover classes,
There you
and
go.
they paid for my voiceover
Yeah.
classes. Now, Bo, I know you, and I know you're active, and you've pursued, and you've studied, and you work. When I took my first voiceover class, it was $10 a week. It's gone up.
Right. It tremendously gone up.
And my
Um,
mom, my mom had a fit when it went to 12.
yeah. And your mom must be really proud of you.
She was. I lost both my parents over the last 10 years, but they were both very, very proud.
So, to people who are listening right now who want to get into voiceover, or maybe who are in the beginning of it, the story that you just told us is so unique and probably could never happen now. Things have changed so much to break into the voiceover industry. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think it can happen now. I think anything can happen if you want it badly enough, and you want it more than anybody else, and you're willing to work harder than everybody else. For my world of animation, it is far easier to break in today than it ever was when I started. Because when I broke in, there were only three networks that had Saturday morning cartoons. Disney did a animated feature every 5 to 7 years. There were just a handful of syndicated cartoons. Today, we have 24/7 networks devoted to animation. We have streaming, we have primetime animation. Every major motion picture studio has a thriving animation department. There have never been more opportunities to work in animation that with games. It falls under the same category. There's so much opportunity today, so much more opportunity today. I mean, I was told when I was trying to get in, look, they've got June Foray, they've got Mel Blanc, they've got Frank Welker, they don't need you. And I'm like, I don't care. Let them tell me that. I don't need you to tell me. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I'm not gonna worry about what has or hasn't happened until it does. But man, you're right. It is very different today. But to work at the level I work, nothing's changed other than more opportunities.
So you pretty much, in order to get animation auditions, you almost have to for sure have an agent or
Yeah.
connected somehow to the
No, you
studios,
have to.
right?
You not only do you have to have an agent, you have to have a top agent,
Mm-hmm.
because for animation, they don't just send it to the agents across the country.
Mm-hmm.
They send it. It's there's a smattering in New York and the majority in Los Angeles, and it's the top tier agents, the top 8 to 12 agents who uh, daily represent the top animation voice actors. It's sort of like, if your dream is to do Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
your agent, your theatrical agent in Orlando is not going to get you the Broadway auditions. So if you want to play in the big leagues, you got to be represented by the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So long-winded answer to your question, yes, agents are absolutely vital if you want to compete in animation.
So these agents specialize in animation. They may dabble in other things, or do they not dabble in anything else? They
No,
stick
no,
to
no, no.
animation.
We're talking about an agency.
Okay.
So I'm with Atlas Talent. There's
Mm-hmm.
SBV, there's CESD, there's DPN, there's AVO, there's Vox. These are the top agents, voiceover agents in Los Angeles. These agents in the agency uh, represent animation. These agents in the agency represent commercials, these promo and trailer, etc. So the larger offices have dedicated departments for the various genres of voiceover, where your all-purpose voiceover agent around the country does anything that comes across their desk, but rarely will it be animation because the buyers don't know to send them copy.
Okay. Well, walk us through an example of how you get an audition and what you do then.
So my agent will email me my auditions. Usually, well, there's no usually. I get auditions throughout the day. And the bulk, if like, you know, if I get a chunk of auditions that say these are due by tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll get them the day before. And let's say it's an animation audition. Let's say it's 3 or 4 characters for a cartoon. My process is I print out the scripts. I'm old fashioned. I like to write on the script. I open up Twisted Wave, I push record, and I go into the booth. And I start recording from the very beginning because I want fresh, I want spontaneous, and from there I make choices. There's a picture, there's a description, and there's dialogue. Based on all that information, I create a character. The most important part of the audition isn't the voice. All characters have a voice, not all voices have character. You have to create a character that sounds like it's been around forever, that has personality, that has conflict, that has a heart, that has a sense of humor, that has purpose, that has intent. You know, people find they're auditioning and they're not booking, and they're like, gosh, I do such a great villain. Yeah, but you're just doing a villain voice. There's no why. Why is your character a villain? Have you delved into the personality or the backstory? All this stuff that the top actors do organically without even thinking about it. And then if you're lucky enough to have a full script, you've got your scene partner's lines to react to. Acting is reacting. If you've got anything in exposition in the script that can be vocalized, it should be vocalized. If your character is making an entrance, you know, walks in the door, what happened before? It doesn't say. Make up something. Was it cold? Were you outside? Was it cold? Was it raining? Come in from the rain, or come in from the cold. If your opening line is, "Hey kids, you want to go get some pizza?" and you're like, "Whew. Hey kids, you want to get some pizza?" Now that little pre-life that I do,
Yeah.
that's a very specific choice. You don't make specific choices, you're going to bore the listener. The listener's the casting director.
So
These
do
are
you
the
do, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How about ad-libbing? Um, everybody questions that. Should you say like, "Hey kids, you want some pizza?" Would you maybe ad-lib a little something after that, or throw in a little word or something like that? Or is that always a no-no?
So warming my hands,
Yeah,
that's
that's
ad-libbing.
ad-libbing.
It's
Yeah.
not ad lib.
Ad-libbing. Okay.
Yeah. It's is I'm a fan of ad-libbing as long as it doesn't sound like you're trying to improve on the writer.
Right.
I rarely add dialogue when I'm thinking of ad-libbing. Sometimes it's pre-life, sometimes it's post-life. I very often ignore punctuation because if you read every comment, it sounds like you're reading. I will adjust contractions if it feels more organic to the character. But I see so many of my students, or just actors in workshops, who they commit more to their ad lib than they do to the written script. It's because they're not comfortable in their own skin with the dialogue, but they are with the ad lib. Well, yeah, that's gonna read in your audition, and it's gonna sound a little inconsistent in the performance.
How about
So
slating? Do they still ask you to slate like
yeah,
they used to, or is that?
every audition will say to slate or to not slate.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't say, you slate, and never, if it's character audition, never slate in character, because you're just they're hiring a person as well as an actor. So the way you say your name with confidence, it reflects, well, I don't know this person. Are they going to be a jerk if I go, "Hi, Bob Bergen"? Well, that sounds like a downer. So I will tell you that there is a trend, especially in commercial reads, where they're saying no slate. I love that because they're judging you just on your read.
Yeah.
I as an actor, I prefer that. But I would say 9 out of 10 auditions ask you for a slate.
And there's so much to tell from a slate, and that's why I agree with you. I think not slating's better for getting the job, because the first thing that comes out of your mouth, they're going to judge you somehow on that.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. And if it's a character and your slate is not the intent of the first scene, they are so married to that script, they understand the rhythm of the scene. They're going to hear the character as you're slating, and they're going to go, "Yeah, but that's not this show. Of course, it's not the show. It's the slate." But if they ask you to slate in character, then you slate in character. Rarely, if ever, do they ask me to. I know that there are a couple of game casting directors who prefer an actor to slate in character. The problem is they don't put that on the specs, and they should. Any casting director who's listening to this, if you want the actor to slate in character, please put that in the specs.
Yeah, exactly. And they could do so much more with asking for auditions, but I'm not going to complain about it, and I know you're not either. And another thing, you really have to look that over, because sometimes they're all different what they want you to do, and they're very, very specific about labeling and those sorts of things. And if you don't do it right, that can throw out your whole audition.
A lot of times they're that specific because they want to see, is this an actor who will take direction if I hire them? And a lot of times they're that specific about, underscore this, all caps here, um, because they want to make sure that you pay attention.
Right.
And you'd be amazed how many great auditions don't get listened to. Also, agents have very specific uh, ways that they like their actors to label and or whatever. Well, if an agent has to go in and correct everything over and over and over again, I mean, a lot of just because you submit to your agent doesn't mean that they're submitting to the buyer. And if it's an actor who's constantly labeling it wrong or not reading the directions, if I was that agent, I'd dump it.
Yeah. It would be too much work over and over and
Yeah,
over. They want
yeah,
their people to do it right.
yeah, exactly.
So, what do you suggest to people when doing an audition other than you create your character? And do you have to take a lot of time to do this, or are you at a point now in your life where you look at a character, let's say it's a pirate, he's old, he's sick, he's got one leg or whatever. Do you pretty much immediately know how you're going to do that character?
It comes organically as I read. First of all, self-directing is not while you're acting. Self-directing is when you're editing. And actors who are self-directing while they're performing are in their head, and it reads
Mm,
in the microphone. So I will do each line two or three different ways, and I'll come out of the booth, and in my playback, that's when I start self-directing. But um, you know, the choices that we make, you just hit upon the what I call the very surface auditions. It's a pirate, he's old, he's got one leg, and everybody and their mother is going to, "Our matey."
right, right,
Okay.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
And a really brilliant actor is going to create a character who happens to be a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
How old is he? Well, I'm I recently auditioned for, it said uh, grandfather, 55 to 65. And well, that's me. That's my age demographic.
Right.
And I don't sound like a grandfather.
Yeah.
I don't have grandkids. I could be a grandfather.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
if I was a grandfather, he'd sound like this.
Well, you don't sound like a stereotypical grandfather.
There's no such thing as a stereotypical grandfather. That's
Well,
my
some
point.
people might, do the
And
old
they're not
man
going to,
voice and
and
thing. And I think
they
that's what
won't
you're
get the
saying.
job. They won't get the job.
Right.
But so here's what I do. Take one. When an audition says think outside the box, this is outside the box. I'm a young grandfather. I got a 5-year-old grandson, and I was 55 when he was born. Isn't he cute? That's take one. Take two. I just might make him a little bit older,
Yeah.
just for fun. You
Yeah.
know. Hang on 1 second.
Scott.
I was taking my I call her Lady, my little Google announcer, out of your program because you didn't need to hear that.
Oh, okay.
So look, the bottom line is this: the safe actor gives a safe read. They're thinking voice, not character. You got to think who, why, how, where, all that stuff. You got to, the script is a skeleton. Your job is to give it a body. Well, how old is this character? How did that? Okay, it's a pirate. The pirate lost their leg. You said he has one leg.
Yeah.
Does he have a peg leg? Does it fit well? Does it hurt?
Mhm.
Is he vain and a little bit embarrassed that he only has one leg? I mean, these are all layers of thought that I put into the simplest character. The most difficult auditions are the characters with one or two lines, because you still have to have a solid character, or as solid a character as if you were the lead with a 30-page script.
How has animation changed now than when you were a young man? The voices, the characters. the cartoons, are they different in our modern age than they used to be?
There's just more of them.
Hmm.
So, I would say when I got into the business, cartoons were very cartoony. Today, there's a good percentage of cartoons where they don't want you to put on a Smurf voice. They want to hear you.
Hmm.
The character is still solid. The character, you still make choices in personality,
Hmm.
in relationships, etc. But he happens or she happens to sound like you. But
Hmm.
there are just as many cartoony cartoons as there are uh, more realistic cartoons. We've got networks devoted to preschool animation. We've got animated features where it's and games which are very cinematic in their performing. As if you're performing on camera. Um, the biggest difference is there's just so much content. That's the biggest difference.
Right. So, if you were to tell people how to get involved in animation, the number one thing would be to get an agent. Should they?
No, no. The
No,
number
tell
one thing
us
is the number one thing is to
classes.
get your ass to an acting class,
Okay, get acting
not a not,
classes.
not a voiceover class.
Tell us a little bit about animation classes and how they differ from acting
Well,
classes.
well, an animation class is not an acting class. It takes good actors and teaches them the technique of creating characters for cartoons.
Hmm.
Without an acting background, without an acting foundation, you're not going to know what to do with those words or be able to take direction. And for this, I blame social media. Is that everybody says, "Oh, let me get into voiceover. I can make money," and everybody, "Oh, I want to do cartoons. I do funny voices. I can do a great Homer Simpson." They've got Homer Simpson. They don't need that. So many people today don't come from an acting background. Acting, improv, then voiceover. And then you study voiceover. I mean, depending on the genre, every genre of voiceover requires its own education, requires its own demo, requires its own marketing. So if you want to do commercials, that's one genre. Animation, that's a genre. Games, that's another genre. Documentary narration, that's another genre. All of these require commitment, training, and marketing. And you need an agent that represents all these genres.
And do you,
So
yeah. And do you encourage people to get a bunch of different demos when they're ready, or do you think that people should sort of stick to what they're good at and
I
try to
say,
stay there?
well, but you don't know what you're good at until you take the classes to find out. I say, you do what you do well. I mean, I don't do audiobooks, and I don't do audiobooks by choice.
Right? Yeah, me neither.
So, I just would rather watch a grapefruit grow than read a book. For the money that the contract has, it just doesn't appeal to me. And I'm not going to read a book that I would read for enjoyment.
I
But
completely
I know
agree.
people that wake up every day eating, drinking, and living audiobooks because that's their passion. Good. That's great. Then we
That's
need that
right.
passion because I'm a consumer of them.
Yep.
But I say you need to do what you want to do. Just don't fool yourself. Don't say, I've taken a couple of classes now, I'm going to make a demo. Well, your competition who took years of classes and have a great demo, they're struggling. Why are they struggling? Because it's not easy. So take shortcuts, take the easy street. Odds are against you.
Because there's a lot of good people
Yeah,
all auditioning as well as
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Well, the hot topic this week it happens to be AI. And let's just touch on that a little bit. I know that neither you or I know too much about it because a lot of people don't know anything about it. It used to be that you could really tell if it was an automated voice. But now with this new technology, I've heard some things this week. You would never know it was a
Yeah.
computer generated voice. It's crazy what's happening. What's your take on that?
The technology's here. It's been here for years and it's very good.
Is it going to, take over
Of
paying?
course. Of course.
Oh,
Of
you think
course.
so? Okay.
No, no, no. Of course. It's not. This is not a matter of thinking. I was on the board of governors at the TV Academy for 10 years. And we had lots of conversations in the boardroom as I saw this starting to affect the voiceover actor. And the set dressers and the makeup artists were all laughing at me because they said, "My God, for the last 20 years, CGI has been getting in the way of our work. Um, you're just the latest."
Right.
And 20 years ago, every makeup artist, every set dresser, cell animators said, "Oh, there's nothing as quite like the human touch. Nothing will compare to the human touch."
Yeah.
Baloney.
Yeah.
That's arrogance.
Right.
That's ego. Of course, this is going to affect the voiceover actor. It's going to affect new work. Now, right now. I'm going to only talk about professional union voiceover because
Okay.
I don't know the non-union world.
Right.
But for union voiceover, here's the silver lining I see. If they create new content from old using using AI technology,
Hmm.
well, we will profit share on that because they have to. It will be codified in our contracts, which is happening right now. The contracts are being negotiated today. And like just like a lift. So if Bo does a commercial, let's say Bo does a Snickers commercial, and that thing runs for, I don't know, 3 or 4 13-week cycles, national commercial, and then they pull it. And then all of a sudden, a year later, they're like, "Oh, you know what? We want to run Bo's Snickers commercial, but just the tag." So Bo will get a call. Bo's agent will get a call. "We'd like to re-up this. What would you like to negotiate? We're offering scale." They always offer scale. "Well, no, we'd like scale for the lift, but we'd like residuals on scale and a half or double scale, whatever, because that's freely negotiated." The same thing will happen with new content that is created from old content by AI. For the non-union world, I know that my buddy Tim Friedlander, who I just think walks on water, he's just the coolest guy on the planet.
Yep.
He's working really hard to offer wording to protect. Here's the problem. Just like the erosion of union voiceover, you're going to get people who are going to be like, "I don't want to lose this job. I'm not putting that in my contract. I just want experience." And they're
Hmm.
going to ruin it for everybody. And there's more of them than there are people who want to keep it legitimate.
Yep.
Sorry, but that's the fact. And
That's
that's
true.
also a byproduct of the internet. So the long-winded answer to your question is, yeah, this is going to affect the voiceover industry.
And what if they want to take that Snickers commercial that Bo did? They want to use her voice for a completely different product. Um, how with SAG-AFTRA, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? If it was union,
Of course you would.
you would.
Of course you would. Of course you
Okay.
would. It would be the same situation. It's a union. You did a union spot.
Hmm.
They could not use that spot or any variation of that spot for another union job without freely negotiating with you.
I guess the worry for all of us is, we're talking about union, but there are places all over the world now that are using AI and probably using it without anyone's knowledge. And that's the difficult part about how to handle that legally.
Except that
Yeah.
here's why I posted on a voiceover page all about this earlier today, and I'm less worried about show business than I am the average person, celebrity or politician uh, having their reputation destroyed by AI.
Right.
All you need is, hey, I'm running for senator. He's running for senator. Let's put it out there that he said something horrible about this group,
Yeah.
or I'm a studio head. I've got a movie being released this week. That studio head has a movie being released this week. Let's put something out there that his lead actress said something horrible just to taint box office.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. It's inevitable. The
Right.
only way to protect against that is, and I don't even think this is going to work, but it's the only way to attempt it, is for the federal government to get involved and make AI created content to incriminate a federal offense like money laundering or mail fraud. Because we live in the cancel culture, and we live with the thought police, where people are destroyed because they said something or they texted something, which I think is unethical to cancel somebody for an opinion. I don't care what the
Yes.
opinion is. I
Yeah.
do not care what the opinion is. I do not care what they say. I care what they do. Actions I care about, but not thoughts or words. And I don't even care if it's against me or anything I stand for. They're entitled to their opinion. But the world doesn't think that way, and certainly our country doesn't think that way. So add AI or deep fake manipulation to that, and we're kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
We're
Yes,
kind
I
of in
agree.
trouble. But the non-union voiceover industry,
Yeah.
honestly, I I see this hurting them financially far more than the union world, far more. Because, and again, I think Tim's group is called Nova, and
Mhm.
it's phenomenal. Everybody listening to this, please check it out.
Right.
He is doing, he and his crew are doing so much good, not just for the non-union voiceover industry, but also the union. They're bringing a lot of attention to,
And that's
and
a health insurance
well, that's one
organization.
thing. That's one thing he's got.
One thing he's got.
No, no,
Yes.
that's like saying SAG-AFTRA is a voiceover union. No, that's one thing they've got. No, it's a
Okay.
voiceover. It's a voiceover organization.
It's Ted Freelander, by the way, if
Tim.
anybody wants to
It's
get in
Tim.
touch with him.
It's
Tim
Tim Friedlander.
Freelander.
Yeah.
Friedlander. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that they have offered is a group plan for voiceover actors. Uh, because if you're in the union, you have to earn, I think it's just under 40 grand for coverage. And a lot of union actors lose their coverage because they don't make that money every year. And so this is an opportunity for union or non-union talent to get health coverage. But they're also really, they've got some templates to put into your contract to protect you from AI. The problem is the internet is so vast, it's impossible to catch. I mean, we can't, if you're a victim of identity theft, you get a call from your credit card company. Hey, did you buy a BMW in Oklahoma? No. All right, don't worry about it. We've tagged it, and you won't get charged that. But they don't know who originated that theft. How are they going to know who originated AI? The answer is they don't. They won't.
Yeah. It's crazy. We have no idea where it's headed. So I know, Bob, that you do a lot of private teaching,
Mhm.
private sessions, and people can easily get a hold of you by going to your website, bobbergen.com, correct?
Yep.
And we want to talk a little bit before you go. You have a fantastic cruise coming up next year. So touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's in January of next year. It's the second one I've done with Mary Lynn Wisner, who is a uh, uh, voiceover casting director and also a wonderful coach. And it's round trip from San Francisco. We're only taking 20 students. Now, people can bring as many guests as they'd like, spouses and kids and whatnot, but only these 20 students will be taking these classes, and everybody else will just enjoy it. It's Mexico, it's Mexican Riviera, but it's going to be 2 full days of animation voiceover workshops, 2 full days of commercial, and 1 full day of marketing and business. Again, it's the second one we've done. I forget the exact dates, but if people email me, bob@bobbergen.com, or go to my Facebook page, it's on there. My Instagram, it's I think bergen.bob on Instagram, and at Bob Bergen on Twitter. Anyway, just pop me a note. I can get you all the information. But I believe we're a little more than halfway booked. And I know it's just like a year out now, or a little under a year, but
Mhm.
cruises book fast.
Okay.
And one thing I'm telling people is, look, here's the problem. If the ship is completely sold out, well, then there are no more cabins for us to book. So reserve a cabin if you're interested. Um, and also, I have a producer, Marion Macero, who handles all of the hand holding and gets people in touch with our. It's a Princess Cruise Line, our Princess travel agent. So the last one we did was so much fun, and we got a bunch of repeats for this year. So I'm delighted. And there's
You,
a VO Cruise
yeah,
Facebook page people should join to learn all about the last one.
fantastic. Before I let you go, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Porky Pig these days and some of the other characters that you do on a regular basis.
Yeah, we got just like about 200 brand new shorts called Looney Tunes Cartoons on HBO Max. Bugs Bunny Builders is the first preschool show that we've done with the Looney Tunes. Um, that's what I'm doing with the Looney Tunes right now. Other
And
shows,
you're locked in with those characters.
no,
If they
no,
need a Porky Pig, they're going to call you.
no.
Oh, okay.
Nobody who does a classic character has a contract.
Okay.
I'm an actor for hire, so anytime there's something new, either they're going to just cast me or they're going to audition me, because
Okay.
I don't own
So
the
there
character.
are other people that do Porky Pig.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is my 33rd year. I do about 98, 99% of it, but sure, there's other people. They have to have other people, because if they offer me something and I'm like, I don't want to do it for that money, and
Right.
they're like, take it or leave it. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try to get more. I'm going to leave it. No, they got to have someone to do it. So
Yeah.
sure.
And there's probably too much for just you to do.
No, there's not.
Oh, okay.
No, there's never too much. No, there's plenty for no, there's not too much for one actor to do.
Okay. Great.
But the majority of my career isn't Looney Tunes. It's just most high profile. So I've got a show on Netflix called Ridley Jones. I'm working on Spidey and His Amazing Friends for Disney. I'm working on The Bad Batch, which is a Star Wars show for Disney Plus. I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Great. Okay, well, I won't keep you because it's Saturday afternoon and I know that you're very busy during the week. So I'll let you go, but I wanted to remind our listeners that it's bobbergen.com. They can find out everything about your work. And if they're interested in some private lessons with you or that cruise, which is spring next year.
Actually, it's winter. It's winter next year.
Winter of 2024.
Right.
Okay, great. Well, Bob, it's just been a pleasure having you on my show. I can't thank you enough.
You bet.
And I just wish all good things to you.
Back at you.